President Trump hitting the midterms campaign trail in New York and knocking the Democrats who were still nursing their wounds from the 2024 election. Watch this.
They are Democrats. You know why? Because their policies are dumb. Their policies are very dumb. All of their policies, did you see they did an autopsy on why they lost the election? And they said you lost the election because of Trump, primarily. But other than Trump, you lost the election because you had crappy candidates and you had bad policy, and they didn't know how to speak properly, and they weren't smart people, and various other reasons. They spent $10 million for the autopsy. It was called an autopsy. And they had typos, Jackson, they had typos in every other sentence. They had misspelled words. They had commas in the wrong location. They gave him $10 million for the autopsy. I could have given him the autopsy without any charge at all. I said, you had one candidate named Sleepy Joe Biden.
And as President Trump mentioned, the Democrats are in full damage control over the DNC's release of the autopsy.
I think it's pretty unbelievable that Gaza would not be mentioned once in the autopsy report.
You don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that Gaza was one of the big issues in the 2024 election.
You know, Jonathan, there's so much in this through innuendo. The issue of gender-affirming surgery in prison, which Kamala Harris supports and did all the way through this discussion of the whole autopsy.
Why are you getting in your own way with a report that don't amount to a bucket of spit?
Very interesting, Paul. So Democrats, most of them wanted to see, their party in the middle, centrists, not go off to some progressive woke side.
I'm going to quote my favorite commentator on these issues, which is a guy named Paul Moreau. No, it's not Moreau anymore. It's Moreau. Most of these voters that they're talking about Gaza couldn't find Gaza on a map of Gaza. All right? It's not an issue. They want, you know who's actually on point with this whole thing is Rahm Emanuel, but they're not going to listen to him. But Rahm Emanuel came out. He went down the kitchen table issues that the Democrats in the last election completely missed. The economy, the border, which was just utterly shambolic. And, look, we can tell when we're being lied to. We can tell when somebody, no, the border's secure. Now, all of a sudden, Mayorkas is saying, well, the border wasn't really secure. Yeah, we knew that guy. All right. You have crime, which was through the roof. The blue cities were in all kinds of trouble. We're being told, no, everything's getting better. We're still getting told that in the blue cities, but they won't go back to before the criminal justice reforms and before George Floyd and compare to those numbers because the numbers are a disaster. And then, of course, there was Afghanistan. We had lost complete trust in our military. Whether you support the Iran war, you don't support the war, the reasonable minds can disagree on that. But what you want at the end of the day is a competent military that will protect you. Because a military that can protect the homeland means that the dollar remains the default currency for international transactions, which is one of the pillars of American power and financial might. But if you have a government whose military can't even pull out of Afghanistan, which is in the 12th century, without leaving behind billions in materiel, you lose that confidence. They won't listen to Rahm Emanuel. And you know why? I'm just going to say this, man. It's going to be controversial because he's Jewish. And that's why he won't be, in my opinion, the nominee, because that party, the Democratic Party, is the party of Mamdani now. And they have moved that base. I don't think a guy like him, that's why they don't like Shapiro in Pennsylvania. Right. It's the two most competent guys they got. They won't go there. And mark my words, you'll see.
Well, Emily, the other thing that was not mentioned in this autopsy was the state of Joe Biden, the president of the United States, who seemed confused.
They couldn't even get the autopsy right, let alone failing at the entire campaign. Yes, look, I expect nothing less from the Democrats, and nothing could be more illustrative right now than these two postures. So you have the president, he's campaigning, he's in a swing state, he's talking about taxes and expanding the suburban map, he's talking about the cost of living, he's talking about the future. This is a forward way of speaking, and it means that this is a party, meaning the Republicans, that are prepared to govern. And then you contrast that with the posture of the Democrats, which can't get even right the autopsy, meaning of the dead body of their campaign. They are squabbling over not only the messaging, but over the ideology of what it all meant. And they had to pay millions of dollars just to learn and reveal exactly nothing because they still aren't listening to their constituents. We knew every step of the way exactly why they were failing, because they weren't listening to rural American, to everyday ordinary Americans, to anyone that believes in a hard-earned dollar and not wanting to fork over all your taxes to a bloated government that somehow prioritizes illegal immigrants over yourself and doesn't acknowledge safety issues in your own neighborhoods, let alone talking about foreign policies. And as people are emphasizing Gaza there, like AOC and Ro Khanna, yes, and what about the Gaza tumor that was here? The 18,000 terrorists flooding across our borders, the 300,000 kids that were missing. I mean, it is preposterous to me that the forest for the trees was lost on the Democrats, and now they still can't see how to get themselves out of it. So I think at the end of the day, voters clearly know which ship has been sinking for quite some time and which will continue to have a forward-thinking approach. And that's going to be the one with the North Star is going to be the one that they're going to hitch their tail to.
Jess, I mean, obviously being anti-Trump is not enough. The Democratic Party has moved very left. Is there a way to bring it back into a more moderate Democratic Party of our parents? Or is it, it's out of the box and that's it?
It's a new kind of moderation. That's how you win in these swing districts where Democrats have a number of enormous pickup opportunities. And even in the 2024 election, moderate candidates performed really well. Like we have Senator Ruben Gallego and Senator Alyssa Slotkin. They won even though Kamala Harris didn't in those states. So yeah, it looks different certainly than your parents, even than my parents, but it doesn't mean that there isn't room within the tent for the Abigail Spanbergers of the world and the Zohran Mamdanis to listen to the rhetoric around which party knows what's going on. Why are Republicans losing all of the elections in the Trump era? They're winning. MAGA candidates are winning intra-Republican primaries, and Trump's out there gloating about that, like what he pulled off in Thomas Massey's district. That's a Trump plus 35 district. Talking about huge wins in Virginia and in New Jersey. I think we flipped 30 legislative seats the Democrats have now. There's real talk of having Rob Sand as the governor of Iowa. Greg Abbott, behind closed doors, is talking about how a Democrat could win statewide in Texas at this point.
Yeah,
and
they
say,
always
okay,
say that. It never happens.
Sure, maybe it doesn't. But I don't know why Greg Abbott then feels like he has to be talking about that possibility unless Donald Trump went out there and endorsed an unelectable person in Ken Paxton, who is so morally bankrupt and gross, impeached by his own party. I mean, listen to Brian Kilmeade talk about him. Donald Trump on the campaign trail. Yes, please, can I have some more? Today, telling people you have more money in your pockets when nobody thinks that, except the richest Americans at this point. The weird stuff, again, about the cognitive tests and how he's acing things that they give to people who've had traumatic brain injuries. No one knows there's a B in the word dumb. We all know there's a B in the word dumb. And he is cratering support with core constituencies. In the Fox poll, amongst Republicans, non-MAGA GOP, white voters, rural Americans, approval in the mid-30s, 71 disapprove of the economy. He's minus 52 on handling inflation. And guess what? There are no legislative accomplishments for the Republicans. Josh Hawley's admitted it. There's a big Politico piece about this. I love this from a GOP Senate aide. The so-called victories, that's what I'm talking about, this, getting Thomas Massey out over the last couple of weeks are just a mirage. They're self-owns. Gas is up 45% due to the president's decisions to go to war with Iran, and he's focused on the ballroom and his slush fund. They couldn't do the reconciliation bill because he's like, oh, there are very fine people came in on January 6th and they deserve compensation. Tina Peters, can please make her the spokesperson.
Really?
About to jump out of his
There's another word with a B that I would like to add to that, and it's in the front. Listen, I did the math. I'm talking about the Democratic Party. They spent $10 million on a 190 page. That's $53,000 a page. $53,000 a page with typos and BS, and they never. It's very simple. They could have done it, and they could have just used F words to describe it: failure, fraud, felonious stuff, like fake. They tried to sell the American people a bill of goods that wasn't there. They tried to convince us we didn't know what a woman was. They tried to convince us that if your daughter wears her hat backwards and plays in the mud, that she knows to go to surgery. There was a million things. Also, who was running the country? Because we had a president who didn't know what time of day it was at one point, wandered off into the woods, had to have Easter Bunny to get him through everything. Where was the real report? Should have named names. Who was running the country? Who was making these decisions? Because it certainly wasn't Biden. Nobody, the same cast of characters are still pulling the strings for the Democratic Party. And I feel bad for Democrats, moderates who believed in what the institution was, because it's been taken over by these socialist, fraudulent people. We're seeing all the fraud in the country. And where is it? It's always in Medicaid. It's always in places where the homeless, always people who need help. Their saviors are the one who are fraud. $10 million for a report. How much, look, all these papers we just made, look, my fan mail stuff, what's that, 600 grand? I mean, that's ridiculous. And you don't need a paper for that. The president, right, the reason why you got your behinds kicked was because President Trump spoke plain talk to the American people. You want to be mad at somebody? Be mad at the American people. It wasn't Trump who didn't vote for himself in a landslide victory. The American people did.
And remember, Kamala, she spent, what, $1 billion in just a few months? Anyway.
And half of it went to the salary of the celebrities that showed up.
Oprah got a few, but she said it wasn't for her.
Guys, we lost. Yeah, we've accepted it. Move on. We get it. That's the thing. Relitigating this, we're already mad enough at ourselves.
The only thing that's polling worse than the polls that you just cited is the Democratic Party.
The brand's in trouble. Why are you losing then to such losers?
I don't know it, but we haven't hit the midterms. We haven't hit the midterms yet. Listen, you got to get to the midterms and you got to get to the national elections. But if you're going to talk numbers, there's undeniably that the Democratic Party right now is polling someplace around Fidel Castro. I mean, come on. Those numbers don't lie. There's about 6 men someplace, I don't know where they are, someplace in New York and LA, that'll vote Democrat. The rest of the men in it, if you have a Y chromosome and you're voting for that party, check yourself. That's all I can say, because they hate your guts.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.